Okay, Dead Gang, I watched this 18-part story so you wouldn't have to. So this is Ari, and Ari's story begins with high hopes and dreams for a happy family life. But her marriage to Dan quickly became a psychological and emotional roller coaster. Now, from the start, Ari found herself shouldering the burden of their family life while Dan struggled with his own issues, including holding down a job. His behavior became increasingly controlling, including invading her privacy and questioning her friendships, especially when she began a connection with one of her coworkers, who Ari felt like she could confide in. I mean, this only seemed to fuel his paranoia, making Ari feel more trapped. Now, at one point, things escalated to a point where both of them ended up getting in a very bad physical altercation. And as a result of that, Ari found herself arrested. And the painful experience in jail served as a major wake-up call. She knew that this marriage was not what she had imagined. And she decided to take the difficult step of moving forward, despite the complications. Now, once separated, Ari threw herself in her new career. She worked really hard to build her esthetician business, gaining recognition for her corrective skincare services. However, while Ari was pouring all of her energy into her business, Dan was doing little to contribute. His inability to hold a stable job became a source of constant stress, while Ari's health began to decline. Diagnosed with a rare kidney disease, she found herself juggling multiple treatments and medications while keeping her business running. Now, during this time, Ari also started to develop a friendship with a client named JJ, who introduced her to a new social circle. Now, Ari, she began to enjoy life outside her marriage, attending parties, meeting new people, and finding joy in a community that she felt long disconnected from. But her husband Dan was not happy with this shift. His jealousy and disdain for Ari's new friends, especially JJ, seemed to grow. Yet he still showed no effort. And when Ari's 29th birthday came around, Ari made the decision to move forward with the divorce. And by this point, she had already opened up her first storefront, marking a huge milestone in her life. She invited Dan to help with the grand opening, hoping to offer him a chance to support her. But this man showed up late, dressed inappropriately, and with his family in tow, leaving Ari feeling disrespected and alone. Now, things took a turn in August when Ari and Dan went on an anniversary trip, one they had planned together. It was during this trip that Ari discovered something that completely shattered her. Dan had secretly maxed out their joint credit cards, including an American Express Black Card. And that revelation was literally the final straw. So then Ari began to make preparations to end the marriage for good. However, just when Ari was planning to make the next step, that's when the pandemic hit, with her business now relying on in-person appointments. I mean, she faced an uncertain future. But Ari's resilience shone through, as she used the money that she had saved to keep her business afloat. During the lockdown, she kept her business open, even though Dan's continued lack of support made things super difficult. I mean, this man was still unemployed, and Ari was left to literally handle most of the financial burden. And by the end of 2020, Ari had emotionally separated from Dan, though they were still legally married. She moved into a townhome on her own, while continuing to pay mortgage for their other house. And in 2021, after a 2-week solo trip for her 31st birthday, Ari realized that she no longer needed Dan to define her happiness. And as Father's Day came around in June 2021, Ari's eldest son came back from Dan's house. You know, the one that she was still paying mortgage on, subtly hinting that Dan had found a new woman. And when Ari confronted Dan about this, he initially denied everything. But after some pressing, he finally admitted to the new girlfriend, someone who he had met online, without ever discussing it with Ari or respecting the boundaries that she had tried to establish. He had been introducing her to their children, and even had her over at the house that Ari was still paying for. Now guys, Ari was devastated, feeling not only betrayed, but also very disrespected, Dead Gang. She had been trying to move on, but Dan's hypocrisy, secrecy, and refusal to have a conversation about their separation were too much. Ari demanded that Dan meet her in person to discuss about the situation. And during their conversation, he blamed her for everything. He insisted that it was her fault for not communicating. But Ari, feeling the weight of the emotional years behind her, knew she could no longer let him manipulate her. Oh yeah, and things took another shocking turn when Ari discovered that Dan had gone further in his dishonesty. He had created an online dating profile where he used personal details of their children without their consent. This included their names and photographs, which Dan had shared in an attempt to attract, and I quote, attract trans women. Not only had been hiding his relationship with Ari, but he had also violated his children's privacy by using them as part of his dating persona. I mean, this revelation left Ari in disbelief, feeling as though the boundaries of respect, privacy, and decency was shattered. And now, after a prolonged and bitter divorce process, where Dan basically attempted to manipulate custody of the children and assets, Ari fought for what was right. His behavior continued to be erratic and self-serving, but Ari stood her ground, ensuring that her children's best interest was prioritized. And by 2022, Ari had moved on with her life, focusing on herself, on her health, and her business. She remarried and found a new sense of peace, surrounded by people who love her for her. Ari's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of self-worth, and the ability to rebuild a life after trauma. And like I always say, Dead Gang, what do you think of this?